So I am channeling my Rube Goldberg variations to create a conversation between me, Pierre Gustafson, here behind the camera, and Patrick Facemeyer, who's over there on the we're talking on Skype on this device. I'm recording on this device, and he's drawing on that piece of paper, and I'm drawing on this piece of paper. And what we will draw and what we will say is unscripted. So wish us luck. And you're using a lithocrayon, it looks like.
Actually, this is just a regular black grease marker.
Okay. Well,
I'm trying to save the lithographic crayons for
important work.
Important things, because I've only got so many of them.
Okay. I went on, may I say what your concern about lithocrayons are?
No, yeah, go right ahead.
Go right ahead. Well, lithocrayons you can certainly buy at any art supply store that's worth its salt anytime you want, or go online and press buttons and they'll be delivered the next day. But lithocrayons evidently are made of animal fat, and a vegetarian of conviction is the person there, and he doesn't mind using secondhand old lithocrayons to create art, but he doesn't want to support the slaughtering of animals for modern lithographic crayons, or hamburgers for that matter. So the second, what I did, I gave him the lithocrayons that he has, which I did not intentionally buy. I accidentally bought when I bought boxes of art supplies. And in amongst various other pencils, there were China marking pencils, which he's using now and I will use in a minute, and some lithocrayons. And I gave them to Patrick, and he very much liked the lithocrayons. And so he's looking for more. So if you have lithocrayons that you don't want, that are, how old do they have to be?
I really don't know. So long as they weren't manufactured. Like, one of the things that will tell you that it's an old lithocrayon for certain is that if it has this this paper covering right here, because they don't do that anymore.
Okay, paper covering meaning to sharpen it, to
lengthen it, you pull off the paper.
Okay, well, I will show how that's done on a grease pencil in a minute. Hold on.
Yeah.
Drawing.
But just some clarification. I'm not entirely certain whether they still use tallow to bind the pigments together with the grease pencil, with not the grease pencils, but the lithographic crayons, because Sukoi, who is actually a printmaker and a very hardcore vegan and animal rights activist, and political activist for that matter, she does lithographs, and I've seen videos of her making work with a lithographic crayon. So, if you know where to find lithographic crayons, great, I'm looking for them, but also if you can say for certain that lithographic crayons these days aren't made with tallow anymore, then, that would help too.
Oh, good. Well, maybe someone in our audience will know that. I'm drawing a little animal here. He's kind of like a cat and a dog put together. He has a tail. I'm seeing your pencil right now is off the screen where you were just drawing. So it's if you move it up toward that direction, I'll see more of what you're drawing.
Okay,
If
should I
there's,
push the paper up too
yeah,
here?
there you go. There you go. Now I can see. I can.
I'll just push it up as
Okay.
far as it'll go.
Okay, that's fine. I can see that. So, one of the things about these China markers, I had a lot of fun drawing with these the other day, and one of the things that I find when I'm drawing with a pen or a sharp pencil is that I have to, it wants me to be more exact, and I feel I can't make mistakes, and I have to draw carefully, and I can't have fun when I'm doing that, when I'm drawing carefully. So when I use a clunky thing like this, it's like putting on a pair of really big, heavy winter boots that are maybe a size too big and dancing with them. You can't dance well, but you can have fun. And these pencils, because they're so broad, I'm able to not worry about being exact. I can just be expressive. And yesterday when I was drawing in the park with a huge lumber crayon, which is, for those of you that don't know what a lumber crayon is, okay, where's a lumber crayon? It's just this big fat crayon. I think they make crayons like that for children, so they can wrap their entire fist around them. But they're big, hunky crayons, and this one was there was no point possible with it. It was like drawing with the back end of a magic marker, the actual thing that holds the ink. This big thing, and I wasn't able to draw accurately, but I drew expressively. So that's what I like about these pencils, is they're really fat.
Well,
And
I found that you drew accurately from what I was able to see. I mean, it's mainly just a question of minuteness. I think accuracy is more in terms of what looks correct, and the minuteness you get with the details and the very fine decorative marks. So I mean, you can still be you are still accurate with the lumber crayon, particularly with like the placement of the shadows and everything.
yeah.
But it's just that you were missing the fine details, which you don't really need, as people like Rembrandt and Velázquez have shown us time and again.
Well, thank you
And
for including
for that matter.
it. Well, thank you for including him and me in that group. I just decided that this animal that I'm drawing is half of a cat and half of a dog, so he's this little voice balloon coming out of his maw saying Mjork. So half of a meow and half of a bark.
That works.
Mjork. But with the lumber crayon, there was a few things that I was trying to draw accurately, and one was this little tiny bit of flattened Ionic. It was sort of halfway between an Ionic and a Corinthian capital, if you can imagine such a thing. And it had a little volute at the end, but the inside was kind of more acanthus leaves. And I was trying to draw the subtle, not so subtle curves, and I put down the pencil, which again was like this fat, and thinking that the line would emanate from this particular point, and it ended up emanating from a point about a half a centimeter to the side of it, and that was frustrating. But when I realized I couldn't, pirouette or whatever, I was just a fine lumbering along clodhopper like. So that's what's fun about using a tool like this. It reminds me a little bit about I've mentioned this before. A fellow art student of mine whose first day of classes that he was teaching drawing students, uh, he had everyone draw with the same tool because he wanted everyone to be on the same level playing field. And he was certain that no one had used these tools before, whether they were sophisticated artists or someone who's never held a pencil. Because what he brought into class for everyone to use was a hot dog, an uncooked but floppy hot dog, and ketchup. So people drew with this floppy thing and ketchup. So, but no one was inhibited by their lack of talent.
Yeah, I mean,
They were just inhibited by the grossness of using a hot dog to draw with. And of course, you, the vegetarian, would have demanded.
I don't know how I would feel about that. Maybe he would have given me like a side of fries or something instead.
Yeah, maybe.
But
maybe.
I think that I like that lesson.
Well, it's quite possible though, Patrick, that hot dogs don't contain any meat in them whatsoever.
Oh, yeah, I think it's very possible.
Very possible.
It wouldn't contain what we would normally think of as meat.
Probably not, but
either way, drawing with ketchup, I think, would make you a well-seasoned artist.
yeah, bump. Let me bring some of my drawings over that I did yesterday. You talk for a while. It'll take me a while to remember where I put them. So you're on.
Now I have to talk to you people all on my own.
Yeah. Not for too long. I know where they are.
Not for too long. Well, that's their fortune. But I have to talk a little bit about lithographic crayons because I'm really fascinated by them. One of the reasons I wanted to draw with them for a while, not necessarily to do lithographs, but just to draw with them, because Goya, one of my favorite artists, actually took up lithography very late in his life, because it wasn't invented until very late in his life, and he did all sorts of the drawings in lithographic crayons. And of course he did like his famous or semi-famous Bulls of Bordeaux, in which, I mean, it's sort of like the extreme of his printmaking. You look at the figures in The Horrors of War, and they're very summary. In many cases, there are certain areas where he's showing you, here's how detailed I can go, and then there are other details where the characters just look like they're drawn by a child almost, or they're just so summary. Their slashes, their lines. With the lithography, it really came a lot closer to how he would work with a paintbrush, because he was able to get that sfumatura, that sort of gray area, and of course he would draw figures kind of like this. I don't know if y'all can see it.
Well, we can see the bottom part of it now, so move the paper back.
Let's see if I can't.
No, the other, pull it toward you.
Oh, I see.
And move it.
Can you see it here?
A little bit further toward you. There you go.
So.
Oh, I'm going to Walmart.
Oh, okay.
Do you need anything?
I don't think I need anything.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Arrivederci.
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 That was my mom.
Oh, I figured.
Yeah. I'm with my parents right now because I'm a piece of garbage. But he would draw pictures he would draw figures like this.
Uh-huh.
Very summary, and of course, since you're so lost in the details guardando le torre, looking at the bulls. I actually said towers there, but don't
Okay.
tell anybody that,
Okay.
because I already told them.
Okay. I won't say a word.
Right. But yeah, you're so lost in looking at the other things that they just blend in naturally to it. And I liked what I'm trying to say is I like the expressiveness of it, and I hate drawing with pencil for some bit, but
Patrick.
crayons really do it for me.
Okay. Great. We missed a little bit of you. I think there was a it says poor connection on my device. So
Well, that's not a problem.
we lost a syllable or two, which is fine. I did find my drawings and my lumber crayon, which I'm holding in my hand. So this is what I was drawing with. So it was almost like drawing with a piece of just slightly overcooked asparagus. Because it was melting in my hand, and you can see that it's curved to fit my finger, and so my ability to draw detailed was compromised. But these are some of the drawings I did, and I'm just showing them part of what I'm doing. In the public garden in Boston is an equestrian statue of George Washington on a horse, which is obvious because of the word equestrian. God damn it, Pierre, why am I being redundant? And there was this little bit of fun capital. There were 4 of these flattened capitals, columns on each side of the pediment, and it was the beautiful sophisticated shapes of the capital contrasting with these jarring angular shadows they were casting on the rest of the structure. So yes, this is a shadow of the equestrian statue on the ground, which is what Patrick mentioned earlier. But it was very interesting. I would put down my pencil, my lumber crayon, onto the page, and let's say I wanted this. See, I can't even do it now. I'm trying to. Let's say this is where I wanted to start my line on that little dot. My camera is shaking here because the table. Maybe we have an earthquake here. I wanted to. Come on, stop shaking. God damn it.
Trying.
Why, how come it's shaking? I'm not touching the table. Maybe we are having tremors here. Anyway, I tried to make the start of a line right there, and I would put down my pencil, and here as you can see, I missed by a little bit, but I sometimes would miss by a lot. So I was compromised by the tool. But what I got was the ability not to worry about being exact, and I was able to just put all of my whatever soul and heart I have into the drawing. I was able to put it out there. And that's what's fun about using hot dogs or lumber crayons or grease pencils or a stick. Someone texted me a video they saw on Facebook, I think, of a guy doing calligraphy using a fork, and he had a spoon on the table that was the bowl of the spoon was just resting on the table, but it was filled with ink. And then he used a dinner fork and dipped it in the ink, and then drew the fork across the paper, and there were 4 lines suddenly. Then he would dip just one in and have one line, and then he made a beautiful calligraphic thing using a fork. So My cat is now wondering what's going on, so he's joining us here. Of course, he can't. He's moving elsewhere now. So, what is you mentioned, Patrick, that you don't like using pencil. Why don't
I
you?
think for me it is first, it's probably some kind of strange prejudice I have, seeing that it's so commonplace, and I don't want to be seen drawing with the tools of the commoner.
Okay.
But there's that, and there's this smoothness and slipperiness to it that doesn't really impedir me. It doesn't stop me from doing anything, but it makes everything seem wrong.
Okay.
So, have you ever just felt? Have you ever used a tool where you know that you're getting the results it's supposed to get, but it just feels wrong? Like you don't like the way it scratches. Like, it's like using certain chalks on a chalkboard.
Mm-hmm. I know that when I pick up one of my ukuleles, I'm unable to do anything with it. I want to throw it out the window because it's so bad. And so I know what it's like with that. With pens, I certainly know what it's like when I have a pen that has absolutely no character. It might have character for someone who, I don't know, for someone else, I guess it's fine. But for me, it just doesn't resonate. I would think, though, with you, when you mentioned about bringing a pencil to the, I just broke my lumber crayon. When you mentioned to me the bringing what was it, a 6H pencil or something?
2H.
2H.
Yeah.
I thought, what the heck you seem the furthest from any H, let alone a 2H. I would think you'd be a 2B to 8B kind of guy. It surprised me.
Yeah, I guess I was mainly thinking just about trying to get as many of those little lines as possible.
I see.
But I mean, in the end, I didn't really use a pencil. I just, broke the laws and used a pen in the Boston Museum because.
Well, as you know, they don't allow watermelon in the museum anymore either, I guess, right?
Oh yeah.
You saw
I
that?
saw that article you sent me,
there was.
I thought there was no way this could be real, and then the museum apologized for it, and so I thought, well, shit, we've lost so much progress.
Boston is often seen as this bastion of liberal political correctness and liberality and humanism, but
I highly doubt it.
But it was seen as that, and during some of the segregation laws that were busing and stuff that happened, there were horrible demonstrations, very racial demonstrations. And when I just before I moved here 30 years ago, and yes, there's racial things that happen everywhere, including Boston, but it was surprising that the Museum of Fine Arts had, I don't know who used the word watermelon rather than water bottle in their warning to a group of African American middle school students that were visiting the museum. But it was used, it was uttered, and the students and the teacher were quite surprised and angered and outraged and offended by that, as anyone should be. And I guess the two members, they were identified as being, paying members of the museum, are now banned for that, which is what they deserve, I think.
I would say so.
So the rule that Patrick is talking about is he was using ink pen in drawing at the museum, and most museums keep artists from using wet material of any sort, watercolors, paints, and ink pens, because of the possible damage that they could cause to the artwork. So, but we were in a section of the museum that we were probably the only people there the entire week. It was in sort of a dark corner, and it was,
And it helped that we were
Romanesque.
too.
Was it Romanesque period or Gothic? It was.
I can't remember. I think it was actually a Renaissance era decorative stuff.
But it seemed more Gothic than that. It seemed more
they
clumsy.
Had a real taste though for the ridiculous when it came to their furniture. It might have been Baroque even.
No, I'm talking about. Well, I'm thinking about the thing that looked like a chapel that you were in.
Oh.
That was medieval looking. Now it may have been.
That was medieval looking.
It was sort of. It looked Northern European, medieval, or maybe Byzantine almost medieval. It didn't really look Italian medieval.
Well,
or Renaissance certainly. So you're drawing. It looks like one of those balloons that you see inflated on the side of the road there. That's bouncing up and down.
Now that you said that, it reminds me of those famous New York rat balloons that the unions put up.
Okay.
Except, it's more of a bat, I think.
More of a bat. Well, I see. I see your bat wing happening. It looks like Gumby is coming out of the top of a bat.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't have thought Gumby.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it upside down, and I'm seeing only half of it. So,
I see.
And I was drawing essentially nothing over here, just scribbling with my lumber crayon and my wax pencil thing. But tools are really interesting things. Patrick can draw absolutely beautifully with a very fine-pointed fountain pen and with a gloppy paintbrush and with a lithocrayon. It seems like every tool you seem to be able to do well with. And Patrick has many different styles. He can draw very realistically, beautiful shadowing, beautiful shading, but he also can draw like he's never held a pencil before. You have that ability to draw what looks to be clumsy, but only when you look at it for about a second and a half you realize how every line is intentional and beautiful. So.
I would say it's just completely clumsy.
Well, you gentle.
In my mind, it's all clumsiness.
Okay. Well, it's. We have to work on your self-deprecatingness, deprecation, sometime. One of the things I just found sitting here on my desk is a Marvy brush marker. And I have a bunch of these that I bought at a flea market. And they're old and essentially dead. They should have been thrown out a long time ago. But their ink has settled right up by the nib, or the brushy sort of tip thing that they have. And the first inch or two of line you make is really gloppy, and then the rest of it is really dry brushy, and it's really interesting. Once you know that that's the trick, you can actually have fun drawing with that limitation. It's fun having tools that give you limitations. This Marvy brush marker should have been thrown out a long time ago, but it has just this little tiny ghost of pigment still in it somehow. I'm drawing your ghosts. Patrick loves drawing ghosts. And he says he can see them, but that's what he says.
Oh, you mean the ghosts?
Yeah, that's what I just said.
Yeah,
Ghosts. There, see? He's drawing one. I'm drawing them, but you're making zigzaggy eyes. I'm making sort of dots. But this Marvy tool is now, there's maybe one molecule of ink left, and it's being spread out on this page.
One of the tools I really liked drawing with a long time ago was Sharpies. I still can draw with them, but it's just something I haven't done in a while. But I really liked using the dried out Sharpies. Because they weren't pencil, but I could still get that sort of graininess that you get with the grease crayon or the lithographic crayon.
Patrick and I owe our everlasting thanks to Peter Draws for introducing us to each other. Not that Peter knew that this was happening, but Peter Draws is a YouTube superstar, I guess, who draws and uses his tool that he likes best, I think, is a Sharpie. And but I sent him a fountain pen, which is and he posted that, he recorded that opening of the gift and trying it out, and that's what Patrick saw, and Patrick emailed me, and the rest is history. But he likes Peter Draws likes, my cat has just walked past here. Peter Draws loves Sharpies, and they can be dried out as well. I use Sharpies a lot, but never really for drawing. I use them for making signs. But I should, I have so many art tools here that I've collected that I should learn to draw with them. There's certain ones that I really hate. I don't like pastels. And it's the dustiness of I don't like even holding them in my hand. I feel that they are sucking every drop of moisture out of my body. It's like when you I don't like flour, creeps me out. I have that same feeling with flour. And
that's an interesting experience.
Oh, well,
I'll have to save that one for my citations book.
Okay.
Flour creeps me out.
Well, oh, Kitty, get down.
I don't know what Kitty did, but
well, Kitty was balancing on one of my many tabletops that has it's my anti-theft, anti-burglar device. Any burglar that comes into my house will certainly first, what would they say, Patrick, if they came into my house?
Oh, shit.
Yes, well, that was, okay.
Where does he keep his valuables? And you'll say everywhere.
Where does he keep his valuables is right. And it's like, okay, there's nothing that looks like a TV set. There's a gynecology table. We could always take that. What do you think, Bugsy?
My mom always did say I should be a gynecologist. I don't know. If your mom ever says that to you, you know, maybe you should rethink your relationship with mom.
Perhaps I think that would be a good idea. Anyway, but I have another tool I have is here's a Sharpie. Smear Guard Sharpie highlighter. Now, highlighters, I find highlighters, the idea of highlighting a book to be offensive at best.
What about using pencils?
Pencils to underline is fine, perhaps, but highlighters came out when I was in high school, I think, and so my fellow students in history class would have their highlighters, and they would be, you know, putting this broad fluorescent yellow color over the important things. Now, first of all, the important things, covering something that you're supposed to want to remember and read again with something that actually hurts your eyes to look at was confusing to me. And it's an ugly color, and it was confusing to me, and I kept on saying, why don't you just take a black magic marker and cover everything that is unimportant? Wouldn't that be easier? And they didn't. So fuck you, Pierre.
That's William Burroughs' method of studying.
No. So anyway, I've got these Sharpies, and I'm thinking, well, what can I do with them that is artistic? And right now I'll send you a picture of what Patrick can't see what I'm drawing here, but I'm making some of your ghosts that I drew, some of your faux ghosts yellow, and now I don't know if these are really, and I'm drawing on top of my China marker, so of course the wet part of the Sharpie is smearing the marker. So I'm coming up with an interesting effect. I think these, you know, sometimes when you go to a flea market, well, I don't know if you go to flea markets, but you see people selling faux Gucci bags and faux batteries, you know, things that say Rayovac on them, but they're completely faux. And I bought a bunch of Sharpies thinking, okay, I can use these. And they had like one drop of pigment in them before they went dry. And I think maybe these Sharpies are faux because they don't really have, I've never used this before, and they're already going dry. Oh well. Try another one. Are you still there? You are. I can see.
I'm still here.
I can see.
No, I'm speaking again on the book thing. I'm on your side with the highlighting, but in terms of just marking a book, I find that act very fascinating.
Yeah, I have a catalog, I guess. I don't think it's I don't know if these were things that were sold. Sometimes you can find Sotheby's and Christie's catalogs that are really interesting because they have artwork that has never been in a museum, and they'll sell them, or they'll combine a bunch of things into one large auction and print a beautiful catalog for it. And there's one I think that I have is someone that collected marginalia. And it was so neat to see how people would
write and draw things
in a book. And I love marginalia. It's so...
One moment, I think I was called just now.
Okay, well you go figure out what your calling is. This is a water, and the water is not changing the the grease pencil. So I guess that's why grease pencils are the way they are, because they don't wash off with water easily. But somehow these Sharpies were smearing it. Must be something in the Sharpie ink. Smear guard. See, the smear guard is making it smear. So explain that to me. Anyway, Patrick is a inspiration to me, and I look at his artwork and I don't tell him this, but I get envious and jealous of his abilities. Envious of his abilities, I guess. Looks like I hear him coming back. And sort of as soon as he comes back.
So I think we may need to wrap up here.
Yeah,
in about 5 minutes.
No, we can wrap up then, or even sooner. I see that we've been recording for 41 minutes and 11 seconds. So I think that might be.
I think
that's
might
enough
be sufficient for some videos.
For some videos, and so I'm gonna zoom in if I can do that. I'm zooming in on your drawing here, and it's upside down, of course, and now it's jiggling a lot because I've zoomed in.
Sorry,
Oops,
that's me hitting the computer.
Okay. Well, we will say goodbye now. So goodbye, folks, and Patrick, say goodbye.
Say goodbye.
Okay, and we'll see you all later. Bye.